Welcome back to Bills and Business, where policy meets innovation. I'm your host, Laura Carr, and today we're diving into the world of defense tech, venture capital, and the bridge between Israel and Texas. My guest today is Tal Shmueli, managing partner at Texas Venture Partners, a $50 million fund backing Israeli startups with battlefield-born innovations and helping them scale into the U.S. We'll talk about why Texas is becoming a landing zone for defense tech, how war is reshaping innovation, and why Tal believes now is the moment to invest in solutions that protect lives and transform security. Let's get into it. So, Tal, tell us a little about yourself and how you found yourself coming from Israel to Austin.
I'll start from the end. Currently, I'm a partner, co-founder of a fund called Texas Venture Partners. We were founded shortly after October 7th. It's a defense tech fund. We're a $50 million fund. We invest in Israeli defense technologies and we help them scale in the US through Texas. In addition to that, I'm the executive director of the Texas-Israel Alliance. We're a 501c3, basically the Chamber of Commerce connecting Texas and Israel, promoting trade between the two territories. We were endorsed by Governor Rick Perry in 2007. I've recently taken this appointment after the former CEO had left. So these are the two things that are keeping me busy. Father-to-be, 40 days, give or take, until the baby comes. And I think it's inescapable. I'm an Israeli. For better or worse, it's a very predominant quality. And what can I say beyond that? I think my business partner, he jokes that I keep trying to do those ancestry tests and DNA tests to see maybe I can find a lineage that traces me back to the Alamo because I'm such a big Texas fan. So far I haven't. I thought I'm from Libya and Iraq. And a few years ago I learned they did a kind of like an update to the data. And I get a notification saying, go check your data. We've updated it. I'm like, what can they update? And I go in and it says that I'm 24% Southern Italian.
Huh, cool.
I'm like, Mom, so the genetic test, it says I'm 24% Southern Italian. Do you know anything about that? She goes, I don't, but I always had the feeling Grandma didn't tell us everything.
That's hilarious.
So,
wow, that's how you find that stuff out.
Yeah, so I think I'm like two percentage points from getting an Italian passport, I think. But
oh, wow. And is your grandma around to talk to her about this?
Unfortunately not. And even if she was around, I don't think she'd give the secrets.
She wouldn't tell the secrets. That's amazing. Well, like you, a lot of people I know in Austin who are the biggest Texans moved here as fast as they could. They're not from Texas originally, myself included. So I relate there.
So first time I was in Texas is 2010. It's very different from the circumstances that brought me back here. But 2010, I have a cousin. He lives in Houston. He has a big coffee roasting factory. Oh, cool. And back then I was living in the desert. I was doing a youth leadership program. So I was surrounded by 40 teens. And at some point it just got too much. I needed a break and I came to Texas. I just crashed with him for a month. And at one day he's just like, dude, I can't babysit you today, but I'm going to go to a cool little town. It's called Austin. I think you're going to like it. So tag along. And we get here and he drops me off on 6th Street and Red River. It's like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in August. And he goes, I'm going to my meetings. I'll come pick you from this spot exactly in like 5 hours. Don't do anything stupid and don't cross the I-35 East. I said, fine, this is 2010. He comes back and in the space of 5 hours, I got inexplainably drunk. And he looked at my arm and he goes, you're not only drunk, you also got a tattoo. I'm like, no, I did not.
No.
And he, of course, twisted my arm and he saw I did get a tattoo from a walk-in parlor in Red River and 6th Street. So this was my first day in Austin and I've been chasing that high ever since.
Nothing can beat that day. How can you ever beat that day? That's amazing. What was the tattoo of?
I don't think that's the topic of today's conversation.
People want to know. People want to know.
People can DM me on LinkedIn.
You'll tell people on LinkedIn?
No, but it's more convenient to ignore them on LinkedIn.
I'll be asking later. I guess it's one you can easily hide in these suits and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really curious to know what kind of constitutes a defense tech company. There's a lot of different companies, I'm sure, in that space, but what types of industries are you in?
The way we look at it is your customer define what kind of a company you are. So you can call yourself a defense tech as long as you want, but if you're selling to small mom and pop shops or to consumers, you're not a defense tech. A defense tech is someone who is selling to defense organizations, to government agencies, to law enforcement, to defense primes, to manufacture in that area. But that's the classification we would use. Tell me who are your clients, and I'll tell you what company you are.
Were you always in the VC world? What were you doing before you started Texas Venture Partners?
I most definitely not a VC before that. I'm a high school dropout. So no higher education. My highest diploma is a bartending course that I paid for with the deposit I got when I was discharged from the IDF Special Forces. So not a VC. I was an entrepreneur. I worked for LinkedIn as one of the first Israelis in Europe. I did a bunch of stuff, but none of them was VC. The day October 7th, when the war broke out, I was running my own startup here in Austin. It was an AI HR startup. And I was doing that full time. This is, I can't say this is how I paid the bills because I wasn't making any money and the bills weren't being paid, but this is what I was doing full time. But the war breaks out and I felt that it'll be borderline betrayal to keep doing B2B sales in a time where Jewish babies are being burnt alive, full stop. It felt very wrong. At this point, we had a very large community here of Jewish and Israeli entrepreneur Texas allies. And we did everything we can to support Israel from here. We raised money. We hosted gala dinners for the Israeli Children's Fund and whatnot. But it wasn't enough. It simply wasn't enough. Thankfully, my friend back then and our business partner, Lorne Abney, Canadian businessman, almost $3 billion in exits, he felt the same. And he donated a lifetime of tzedakah, charity in Hebrew, over the first few weeks of October 7th. And he calls and he goes, man, what are we going to do? We can't donate ourselves out of this situation. The soldiers are scrambling for equipment. The government is trying to figure out what to do. We have hundreds of orphans. What are we going to do? And together we thought of a way to kind of solve a few things that matter to us. So Lorne is a private market and public markets guy. So very, very, very savvy. And he asked for an idea that will solve for the next three things. He says, I want to funnel as much resources as I can to the hands of Israeli entrepreneurs because everyone else had turned their back on them, which is 100% the case. Second, I want to help rebuild and restore the Western deterrence. I want to make sure that the West is strong, that Israel is strong, that the US is strong. And lastly, anyone who's trusting me with money in a period like this, I want to make sure that they're rewarded for their trust and their appetite for risk. What do you have to offer that can solve for all of these things? And I came back to him and I said, I think it's a Texas Israel fund. I don't know what the fund's going to do. And he goes, okay, let's figure it out. We started off by saying, maybe we can do something that kind of copies the American doctrine of hearts and minds. So we can do foods and fridges, basically changing the perception of Israel through technology that can be found in any home. And we realized that this is a little too abstract for people to get involved in, and we narrowed down the scope. As we were doing that, we started seeing some deal flow. We let people know we're going to do something. And the most impressive entrepreneur, the most heart or gut-wrenching stories we heard are from Israeli entrepreneurs coming back from the war, stopping everything they did to start a defense tech startup. And we realized we're going to be a defense tech fund. It was very early on to the game. The hype cycle hasn't really started yet. But we were dead set on making it happen. And thankfully, we are.
Wow. Well, that's an amazing story. And I'm so intrigued if, so far starting this fund, I know that you started it on July 10th. So 7/10. Can you share some of the kind of significance behind that and what that means for you?
So we had 10/7 and this was a moment that will just etched into time and into history, and we were so frustrated and so hurt and so still grieving, still trying to understand the trauma, and we still do to this day. But we felt we need to go on offense, and Israel was already dominating the news in a way that's hard to get anything in. So we figured we need to weave our story into the general context, and the idea was, from 10/7, flip the script, 7/10, and basically we're going on offense. The Jews are fighting back. And I think what it did for our investors, it made them realize that we're serious about our commitment to Israel. It also made them proud to be able to support a cause like that. And I think PR-wise, it also made some maybe bored journalists who had nothing to write about in a hot July day and were tired of the war. We gave them something else to report on.
And how many of these companies you're working with right now have been impacted by all of the attacks? How many so far?
So we were lucky to fund 9 companies to date, maybe 10 by the end of the month. There are many more. Our remit and scope is very narrow. We invest, give or take $1 million into very early stage companies. Some companies are too early, some are too advanced, but within our niche, we've invested in 10 companies. We're trying to help as many as we can. There are tens, if not hundreds of companies operating in that space in Israel alone.
And can you share some of the companies you've invested in so far, what they're doing?
So in a nutshell, how do we choose our companies? We try and overlay what Israel is good at producing with what we're good at investing in, which means software-based, very small hardware components, a lot of AI stuff, things that can benefit from real combat experience. And we try and overlay that with what the DoD is looking to purchase or develop, so the critical technology areas. If you take that Venn diagram, right in the center of it, you'll find what we invest in. And I can give a few examples. Some companies that we're especially proud of, one is called 1AU. It was founded by a UATX student here in Austin, and they're developing performance coating for optical components, basically enabling directed energy weapons. Oh. So how do you get a high-powered laser to not melt the machine it's fired from? So that's what they're doing. It's bordering on a moonshot. It has a huge defense application because we need to get it right to intercept hypersonic missiles that are threatening us from a bunch of places. So that's one company. Wow. Another company we're especially proud of, they're called Spectres. They are doing cyber intelligence for the dark web. And what they realized throughout October 7th and everything that happened after is that traditional intelligence agencies are limited in their technological abilities, in their headcount, and unfortunately, some places don't get the same attention as you think. 2 instances I can name. One is an Israeli airplane landing in Dagestan, in Russia, almost being lynched to death by an angry Muslim mob that was there to get them. So these guys, ex-Mossad guys, they're asking themselves, like, how could it be that 300 people organize a meeting to hurt Jews and no one knows about it and we're not prepared? They figured there's a way to address that, and that's all I'll say publicly. So that's another company. I can also say that some of the technology has been used in trying to prosecute the people who organized the Amsterdam pogrom, basically the attacking of Israeli soccer fans a few months back. So they're pretty advanced and they're doing actual life-changing work. Some people would say that if we had them before October 7th wouldn't have looked quite the same. Maybe the last one I will mention is a company called Infinidome. And this is a guy, an entrepreneur, one of those guys who's, once he locks his teeth on something, you can't get him out. His name is Omer. And he learned at some point 5 or 10 years ago that while the Iranians are threatening to annihilate Israel, we can't really respond back or do any type of a proactive attack because there's all sorts of limiting factors. One of them was GPS continuity. What can you do to protect the mission once it's already in motion? And how do you fend off electronic warfare and stuff? So he started this company that's basically allowing for spectrum dominance, for anti-GPS scrambling, that will allow our fighter jets to get to wherever they need to go and do what they need to do to keep our people safe.
Amazing. And I love that you're very mission driven as well. What would make a company for you stand out to any entrepreneurs listening?
The number one thing that I can't teach is how to be teachable, how to be coachable. And if you approach the defense tech game thinking you have it figured out, it's going to be very hard to work with you. So I can take a really bad idea and make it better. I can take a very bad plan and make it work. And we can take very green entrepreneurs and help them become very successful. But we can't do any of that if you're not open to learning.
How are you working with the U.S. Department of Defense and just working in the U.S. and in Texas in that space?
Texas is wonderful to us in so many ways, which I'm sure we'll get into. The DoD, it's such a huge organization with so many different prongs and branches and programs that it's hard to talk about in one fell sweep. But I can say this: there's no place friendlier and more accommodating for business and for Israelis than Texas. Once they come here, they fall in love with it, and they understand and they see the upside of working and operating out of here. We can get them to almost every office we want to because people are open and receptive and support the cause. The DoD, there's a variety of ways to go and work. It depends on the company and the stage they're at. There aren't really streamlined ways for us to collaborate, but I can mention one thing we've started doing recently. Just last month, we are in April, so 2 months ago, we launched something we call the DoD Readiness Program. Because this path hasn't been charted, and after seeing about 300 deals, we started seeing some patterns, things that entrepreneurs get wrong when trying to break into the US defense market. So we developed a program that means that even if we don't invest in you directly, we're going to try and get you prepared and ready to start selling in the US and collaborating with the DoD. I can go into some details of how the program is structured, but in a nutshell, we're trying to streamline and write the playbook for something that hasn't been done before.
Okay, so you are actually starting that program. How are you helping the founders navigate that right now?
So founders are a remarkable species of humans. They'll figure everything out. It doesn't matter how hard or how complicated, but some things take too much time or too much money to do. Yeah. And that's what we're hoping to solve. Everything that we're going to do for them, they could probably do on their own if they had 2 more years of run rate. I'm saying this up front. Most things. Now, we want to shorten that timeline because we are working to solve challenges that are costing lives today. Mm-hmm. So how do we do that? We broke the program into 4 modules. Module number 1 is DoD understanding. This is a huge organization. How do you interact with? What programs are available? How do they work? How do you approach? What is the congressional appropriations process? Do I need or don't I need a federal lobbying? Like there's a whole lot to know. So this is module number 1. The second is called operational compliance. How do we take an Israeli domiciled business entity and turn it into an organization that can sell in the US under security clearance to the most scrutinizing organizations out there? And that takes a whole lot of work to do in the back end. So we help them with that, and they end up with a cap table and a board and a company formation that's aligned with what the US needs and asks for. 2 other things we do. One is called market access. So you're an entrepreneur, you just finished your term in Gaza or in Lebanon, and you want to go back and you want to start working on this defense tech startup. What do you know about hiring in the US, cultural differences and people, and how do you get to the right programs, etc.? It's a huge gap for any company, let alone in defense. So we offer market access, anything from helping them apply and receive SBIR and STTR grants to matching them to veterans with a designation that can help them start their US entities and streamline some of that sales process. And the last part, which we kind of touched on, it's called founder skills. Telling a story in Hebrew to your friends over a beer is one thing, but being able to sell a critical technology component in a Pentagon boardroom is a completely different skill. So we're going to try and up-level you to the level of an American executive rather than just an Israeli founder.
That's an amazing program.
We're running the first cohort now. Hopefully we live up to what we're promoting. There's a lot to do. It's not easy, and they're building their company. We're building our fund. So we thank the people who supported us, and we're gonna do everything we can to make them successful.
And you touched on this a little, but why Texas, and why does it make it so appealing to be here for Israeli defense tech?
I think you can look at it from a few ways. If you look at Texas, everyone no state income tax and business friendly environment, and I think it's fine. Right. And very easy to say. What I've learned from working in Texas and with Texans, there's something else that's much more alluring and that you can't find anywhere else, at least not in the traditional tech hubs. Unlike Silicon Valley or New York, where it sometimes feels like a zero-sum game, Texas does not feel like a zero-sum game. Texas feels like an open-sum game where people aren't afraid you're going to take their meal or their client, and they're genuinely interested in helping you. I don't know if this is a frontier mentality that resonates through the decades or what, but people are genuinely and honestly helpful. They care, they give a shit, they want to see you succeed. And if they don't, they'll tell you to your face, and you know where you stand, which is something that Israelis, I think, appreciate more than they can understand. Having lived and worked in Ireland and London, both fun places to be in and work in. But I would go out of a meeting in London and I wouldn't know if it was a good or bad meeting. I just had no tools to assess. Very, very frustrating. In Texas, you know where you stand, and more often than not, people will go out of their way to help you. Maybe last thing I would say, post-October 7th. If you are an Israeli entrepreneur, you're a mom, you want to bring your kid somewhere, your career requires it, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting my kid in a school where he would face boycotts or walkouts or whatnot just because he's Jewish or an Israeli. We have none of that in Texas, and I think it helped some people who are still on the fence come here and make Texas their home and grow their roots here.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, because you hear all the typical things, but those are some unique ones. And I also feel the same. People are pretty to your face and up front. The culture is awesome. And a lot of people here also moving here, like we talked about, they're not necessarily from Austin originally or from Texas originally. But
and there's an appetite for risk here. There's this entrepreneurial spirit of you have to go and make it happen. No one's going to do it for you. So I think that appetite for risk is very appealing to Israelis, and it comes with a tolerance for failure, which is part and parcel of what we do.
Now, some of the reservists and startup founders that you're talking to, like post October 7th, what is kind of what's been influencing the innovation that you've been seeing from that shift, would you say?
I think if you really broaden the scope, there's a lack of meaning in many people's life in the secular West. No organized religion, they don't go to church or synagogue, and all of a sudden we are identified by our choices as consumers, and it's very, very superficial. October 7th has exacerbated that for Israelis. It's an existential necessity. If we don't figure out how to protect our borders, no one's going to figure it out for us. If we don't figure out how to stop missiles mid-air, guess what? We're going to meet those missiles the way we don't want to. So what that created is a drive for people to reconsider their jobs with Google and Facebook's. Could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars selling ads or developing features for algorithm optimization, and realize, wow, I served 3 or 4 years in the army. I have a skill set. I can put that skill set to work for my people. I can probably still make good money doing that, because these skills are needed more than just in the state of Israel. So we're seeing that people walk away from jobs in the most lucrative and sought after companies to start or join defense tech startups. So that's one. There's an opportunity there. I think the second part is people who have been personally affected by the war. One of the other companies we've invested in, they're called Unikai. They are doing battlefield AI. And what they do is very cool. They basically take hundreds of thousands of different variables and they are able to compile them and giving you an output so you can plan and execute operations. That's lovely. But more impressive than the software is the reason they started doing that. The folks who founded it are ex-Shaldag. Shaldag is the Israeli Air Force Commando, one of the most elite units in the Israeli army, with a stellar track record of activity that so far, up until October 7th, had 0 casualties. They were in and out, no one would know. Since October 7th, there has been at least 11 people, soldiers that have lost their lives to the conflict, to the war. And the CEO of the company, Nadav, he's like, I'm doing this because my friends and brothers in arms, they deserve better tools than what we could offer them when the war broke out. I don't care about selling to the US. I don't care about selling to NATO. I care about putting the right tools in the hands of my comrades so that when they go out and fight for our people, they do it with the best technology, most cutting edge tool, because we can use everything we have in order to be successful in our fight.
Wow. And are you seeing an organic movement of founders moving to Texas, or is this something that you're marketing or sharing that your mission?
When I first got here, July 10th, 2021, that's my Texas-versary. Every year on July 10th.
Same year as me.
I go to the Texas Chili Parlor.
No way.
Yeah, and then I go to the cloakroom, and that's how I celebrate my Texas anniversary every year. Who wants to eat chili in July in Texas? Me. Anyway, so ever since I got here, I show up and I'm looking for other people with a similar story, and to my surprise, there were already about at least a dozen here. Some of them are very successful. And they came here, some came here to park their money post-exit. Some of them came here because they had enough of the Silicon Valley. Anyway, we started meeting and it felt very organic. Years go by, our community grows, we become the official chamber of commerce, and now we realize there's a lot of interest. How do we capitalize on that interest? How do we make people who need a little bit more in order to come here? So we announced our vision, which is to bring 100 Israeli tech companies to Texas in the next 10 years. And we launched it under an initiative we call Consider Texas.
Oh.
That's all we ask people to do, because I believe that if you put Texas side by side to anywhere else in the world, more often than not, Texas will win. So we're making it easy through Consider Texas and the Alliance for people to make the decision to come here. We connect them to the people who can help them, relocation support, even immigration support if needed for their companies or organization, legal support, financial services, everything they need. Now we have here anyone from post-exit, post-IPO entrepreneurs to small business owners who are making babkas, which is a delightful Jewish pastry, all happening in Austin. So we're very proud to be a part of the Texas cultural mosaic and contribute to it and try and keep Austin weird in our own little way. And maybe just to finish that, I'll say that many of the people who come to Austin, and we consider it our job as the Chamber of Commerce to tell them, guys, you may be living in Austin, but you came to Texas. So like Austin is just a part of it. And so we consider it our job to expose them to the greater Texas ecosystem and business environment and make sure that we're an active and contributing part of it.
How is Austin different to the rest of Texas to you in your eyes?
I'll say this. I think every part in Texas gives you a different flavor of what it is. I think Austin caters for people from the outside. It's like the gateway drug that makes you fall in love with Texas.
Sure.
And for some people, that's enough. They're like, all I need is the Austin flavor of Texas, and that's all I can handle. For some people like me, I just want more and more and more. Who else read all 4 Lonesome Dove books? I mean, me. So for some people, that's enough. For others, they need more. I think one of the most wonderful parts in Texas is that there's always more to discover. After 2 years in Austin and going to all the old Austin places and the new Austin places and doing all the things, you get to discover that there's Houston, and it's a powerhouse of a city. And if you're curious enough, you'll find yourself in Dallas and in El Paso and in Midland and in Marfa. So there's and in Galveston, and like the list goes on, and my bucket list for Texas is still long, but there's so much going on and it has so much to offer. Yeah, my advice to everyone is like, enjoy Austin for what it has, like great work-life balance, great dating scene, great food scene, but it doesn't even begin to tell the story and magic of Texas as a whole.
Oh, I love that. And you said you were working with Rick Perry years ago. How did that happen?
So when the organization, the Texas Chamber started, the guy who started is an Israeli businessman called David Weissman. He's an energy entrepreneur in Israel, and at one point he was also one of the biggest employers in Midland. He had a refinery there and all sorts of things. And he realized that the connotation to Israel is mostly religious, mostly philanthropical, and it was his vision to also create a business path, not just a religious path between Texas and Israel. So he founded the organization as the Texas-Israel Chamber of Commerce. Governor then Rick Perry endorsed the organization. I still have the signed diploma. It's hanging in my office. And the organization had many phases in its life. At one point, they flew over the entire Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra to Dallas, which was lovely. And now we're trying to take it into the economic development, promoting trade between the two nations. And I think that's of a specific importance in this point in time.
You mentioned all the amazing things that you're doing outside of just capital for your founders. Are you doing a lot of this mentorship as well? Or do you have a big team that's helping with all of that?
We do not have a big team. And everyone who's still waiting on a WhatsApp message from me knows that. So we're not a big team. We do all of our own stunts, and it's Lauren and myself. We have a wonderful chief of staff and some more people who are helping on the lines. We have very committed venture partners and limited partners who are all part of the mix. But there's very little room to delegate anything. What we try and do is put companies on the right trajectory. And sometimes it's not really nice because they're getting to hear a lot of hard truths from us very early on in our relationship. And it could be a little tricky because there's the courting phase of an investment. We want to get to know you, we love you, everything you say is amazing to us, right? And then there's you lift the hood and you realize, or things start to go wrong. This person leaves, this contract falls apart, this technology didn't mature the right way. And we offer aggressive corrections. Let's call it that, because we know these companies don't have a lot of time to lose. So mentorship with us, you can expect an hour or two a week with us. We're going to help you put a structure of board meetings and reporting cadence and metrics that you can report and be accountable to. We can make a lot of things much shorter for you in terms of hiring and some sales development stuff, but we probably can't teach you how to be a founder. So we're not that kind of a fund. Not because we don't want to, just because we have to select how we spend our time, and it's not teaching you the rope of founding. It's helping you execute.
What do you think prepares founders for that? As a founder myself, I would say nothing can prepare you for it.
In a way, the less prepared you are, the better. I mean, think of everything you know about getting the company up and running now. If you would have known that, like how much it's going to take, how much longer it's going to take, how much less money you're going to see from it in the beginning, I don't know that you would have made the same choice way back when. I wouldn't have left LinkedIn if I knew how hard and ungrateful it'll be to be a founder for a while. Like, you either are able to fall in love with it, and once you realize you're an entrepreneur in the closet, then you come out and you're like, okay, I guess that's my life. That's the rock I have to push. Fair enough. But I don't think preparation helps. I'd say this: I kept waiting personally. I've read all the articles and did all the programs. I waited to a point where I would feel prepared, and I was not. The one thing that helped me was when someone who I was working with, he told me, dude, I know there's no job in this company I can offer you because you're going to end up starting your own company and it's going to do better than mine. And it was a very vulnerable thing of him to say. It took me a second to believe him because I didn't think that of myself back then. But then I'm like, whoa. I'm like, Tommy, are you? He goes, yeah, man. Like, you got this. I see you work. You got this. You can work here for as long as you want, but the next thing you're going to do is start a company. And I did. So be unprepared, but find people who believe you are, and they'll nudge you on your way.
Oh, I relate, because I also didn't feel like I was prepared, and I had a boss say to me, "You're just going to do so much better than I ever have." And he was so successful. I'm like, saying that to me, I thought, well, thanks for believing in me so much, because that's what helped me.
Yeah.
But now I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. I love it so much. Being a founder is great.
Yeah. I mean, some people see things in us that we can't, and when that happens, it takes a second to. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could love myself the way these people love me at some point in time, which is humbling.
Self-love is great, though. Well, that's very cool. You're spending a lot of time with your folks. Tell me a little bit more about what you see the Israel-Texas relationship becoming over the next 5 years. Obviously, it's been growing so much, but what do you see it changing into? I
mean, we're already off to a great start. Governor Abbott had done more for Israel than any leader I can think of, honestly. Yeah, our people are incredibly grateful. We've actually recorded a video that I need to send to his chamber of our people saying thanks for making Texas feel like home for them. And so we're already off to a good start. I think both countries have their own challenges coming up. For Israel, we're going to have to economically restore ourselves, politically restore ourselves, regardless of where you are on the spectrum. Like, the country is wounded. I think Texas is holding the flag for a certain type of America and trying to fight off or fend off many people who have a different vision for it. So I think there's an existential threat to the way of lives in both countries. And in a way, Israel and Israelis, we always knew the US has our back. And there was always a sense that if when push comes to shove, the US has our back. In many ways, this is still the case. In some ways, this was challenged. This was challenged. Israel was exposed in ways that we weren't planning on. And now we have, and we relied on the US, and we're grateful for all the help we've received. And now Israel has a unique opportunity, I think, to give back and reciprocate. Because today you see our highest pedigree, smartest, most ambitious entrepreneurs and founders building technologies that are fed with real life combat experience, literally paid with the blood of our comrade. And they're saying, guys, there's a lot coming your way, whether it's China or North Korea. Like, people are out to get you. We're here to help. We're here to share everything we know and have in order to make the US successful and resilient and strong. And I think that's a precious moment in time. We are very fortunate to be able to facilitate some of that through the chamber and through the fund. So to answer your question more directly, where do I see this relationship going? I think that as soon as we figure out the whole direct flight from Texas to Israel, it's going to make it so much easier for people to spend more time here, increase trade exponentially. Sure. On top of that, if Texas will make a slight adjustment to the law book and will allow Israeli doctors to practice medicine in Texas, there's a whole host of combat-trained doctors that want to share what they've learned and seen in Texas. So we can expect a two-way migration, I think, even if people don't come here for life, but come here for a few years. I think there's a lot of exchange that can be done. And I'll say this: if you are an Israeli entrepreneur that starts manufacturing, the whole wave of reindustrialization or nearshoring or whatever, onshoring, and you're thinking about where to set up your supply chain, your factory, what better place than Texas? So hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, we don't just see the software guys that come in here and work from Proud Mary on South Congress on their laptops. We see people who are here to set up factories. So, and they create jobs and they offer jobs and they become a productive and hugely contributing part of the Texas economy. So that's what I think we have in store. I would love to see more Texans visit Israel and experience the magic of Israel. Everyone who I've taken from Texas to Israel and from other places mentioned it as one of the most profound experiences they've ever had. So I had the pleasure of seeing Israel for the first time through the eyes of all of these people. And I think with Texas, it resonates in a whole different way.
Oh, that's what all my friends say who've visited on, work trips and with TAB or any of those. They've all said that. So I would love to go. I haven't had the pleasure of going yet. So.
As soon as this baby can look after himself, we can go.
Let me know. I know. The next 9 months or so when you guys are all settled. What policies are you working on right now? I know you mentioned they've been in the Capitol a few days. What are you working on trying to get done this session?
So I think this session was particularly weird because so many plans have never even saw the starting line of the legislative process.
Sure. Because
of the overflow of bills and proposals. So the one thing we're hanging our head on, which we're working on in collaboration with Texas Association of Business and Senator King, is and Representative Capri-Leon, who's leading that. Yeah. Which is the Texas-Israel Trade Office. So Texas has a trade office in Mexico and in Taipei, in Taiwan, and hopefully the third one will open in Jerusalem. The sooner the better. I think it'll go a long way in facilitating that two-way corridor between Texas and Israel, help our people see why we fell in love with Texas and the opportunities that are there. This is the number one priority for us. Everything else, the legislators have done a remarkable job of making this place a home for everyone who wants to participate the right way, and we're humbled and grateful for that.
You mentioned easier flight, having the approval of doctors from Israel to come to Texas. What other things would make it easier for people to move here, do you think?
I don't think it should get much easier than that, to be honest with you. Maybe there's stuff to talk about on the defense side and how to facilitate business making.
Sure.
That's a different topic, but I think you need to bring here just a little bit. It can't be like just a little
You're
bit.
such a Texan.
People need to want to be here. I think you'll end up taking things for granted.
Yeah.
I lived in Europe. People migrated from Netherlands to Dublin for the company, or from London to France, and it just created a very transient lifestyle. I can be here, I can be there, I can still have a relationship 1,500 miles away. Like it doesn't really matter. So you don't really plant roots. And if you really want to enjoy what Texas has to offer, you need to plant roots. You need to immerse yourself and assimilate to an extent. So let's not make it too easy.
No, I love it. We'll have to go to the cloakroom and chat about it. You're such a local with it. I love it. What's your vision for your fund over the next 10 years?
So I think we really hit a nerve with the Israeli early stage tech fund. We're seeing incredible entrepreneurs building wildly ambitious companies, and that's great. I think we should, as a fund, accommodate with the experience we've gained, also founders from outside of Israel. So we already have one in Austin. Hopefully with Fund 2, we can start growing our influence outside of Israel, and maybe later on outside of defense. So if you're doing defense, you care about where your products are being made. So maybe Fund 2 or 3 will have some angle of Industry 4.0 or whatever the name will be back when it happens. Maybe after that, when you start thinking about geopolitical challenges and you're starting to think about, supply chains and manufacturing, that comes down to metals and resources. So what does that look? If we look at rare earth minerals and the likes, does that mean we need to spend more time in space? Does that mean we need to create more alternatives on Earth? But maybe farther down the line, this is something we're focusing on.
Maybe a little bit of both. We had Norman Garza, the head of the Space Commission, on recently, and there's so much innovation in space coming here. It's so exciting.
It feels like, like how Shopify made e-commerce possible. It feels like space is becoming more and more accessible. People like, if as a kid your dream was to be an astronaut and you'll be like 1 in 500 million people is an astronaut, now it's like actually there's more paths to space, and that's exciting.
So we talk a lot about like business, policy intersections. What's like a policy or mindset shift you think would kind of unlock this new wave of innovation for defense tech?
It's so broken that you can probably pick on a whole host of things in defense innovation. One thing I would say, and this ties back to the point of being reciprocal and helping US promoting its interests, make it easy to sell to you. For example, our entrepreneurs, they go on LinkedIn, they research, they send cold emails, and in a way I get it, because no one likes to be sold to. That's fair. But I think there's room for a much more collaborative process. In a week's time, I can probably fill an airplane with Israeli entrepreneurs, the most successful, advanced, etc., and have them here, meet with anyone. And they'll sit with you and they'll say, Laura, what's important to you? This is what we have. How can we make this useful to you? And together you'll define and refine and create a spec and work to build what you need. They would want to lend themselves into the technology to the US at large. And I think that's something that needs to be facilitated. Make it easier for people to come and work here. Not necessarily come here and work, but come and work on your behalf. This is one thing would be good to see changing in the next couple of years.
What's kind of a call to action you'd have for any founder listening right now?
We talked a little bit about coachability. I'm going to repeat that in a slightly different way because it's a huge one. If you're a founder, you're probably familiar with the term degrees of freedom. Let's say when I moved to LinkedIn, I was living in Tel Aviv at the time, and new country, new company, new role, new industry, not my language. I had almost nothing to go on. Everything was new. So as a founder, I think you should try and preserve as many degrees of freedom as you can. And this will allow you to play to your strengths and kind of make sure that your learning curve is focused on the areas that are, it's not everywhere in your life, right? It's not the language, the company, it's more specific. one part of that is selecting the right partners to work with and letting them take you through that journey. We want to think ourselves as one such partner. And it entails two things. It means trust, like, okay, maybe you're saying things that are hard, maybe you're saying things that that kind of go against my assumptions, but embrace and learn. So trust us. Then that I learned when I was here, it's be generous. Founders sometimes hold their cards very close to their chest. And I think generosity in our space goes a long way. It's for granted, no one's going to work harder than you on your company. No one. Expecting people to do that is unrealistic. If you can adopt that and say, okay, this is my company. It's not employee number 2 or number 3 company. It's my company. And you can be generous to them. It'll go a very long way. So preserve some freedoms. When you become a founder, partner with the people who can help you preserve those freedoms in one thing, and the other is be generous and understand no one is going to love your company more than you. No one is going to work harder at it. This is a given. Now you have to be generous to the ones who are taking a chance on you and let them do their thing.
That's great advice. And I feel that too with hiring a new team and bringing them on. It's new challenges every day, and just want to make sure that they're happy and enjoying it and in the right spot.
Yeah, and this advice, I know we'll probably finish soon, but this advice I got here locally, a guy who invested in my previous company. And the story goes like this. We left an event together, and on the way to the car, he asked me, so how are you doing? And what do? I start selling. Pictures, clients. And he goes, stop. What did I ask you? I said, you asked me how I'm doing. He goes, and what are you doing? I'm like, I'm telling you how I'm doing. He goes, no, you're selling. You already have my money. Like, stop selling. I asked you a personal question. How are you doing? And then he kind of wove in a few of those advice. And generosity was right there. He goes, this is the guy whose company was valued at the time at $1 billion. And he goes, like, if I'm leaving you with one thing as your mentor is be generous to the people you bring on board. Like, just learn that from me, which I found helpful. The other thing he said is stop with that single guy in Austin bullshit.
Yeah, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Because it might be a whole lot of fun, but it's not going to help your company. I'm like, are you serious? How can I love a person and build a company at the same time? And fast forward 2.5 years, I love a person. We're expecting a little baby boy, and I'm building 2 companies at the same time. So he was right, and here's me taking my own advice, which is listening to someone else when they have something wise to say.
I love that. Yeah, Eric always says, I want to make sure everyone who ever works with us has a pot of gold at the end of whatever it is we have an interaction with, make sure they're both feel rewarded. So I like that a lot. Yeah,
it's something to aspire to if you have the privilege of having other people work with you or for you. They're trusting you with like a period of their life. It's a big commitment.
That's a cool way to put it too. You have a lot you're working on right now, and you have a little boy coming, you said very soon. So what's keeping you most inspired right now?
Inspiration is very fleeting. So I don't need to be inspired to get up and go. I need coffee and Wi-Fi. So I'll put that aside. But for the first time, working towards something that is securing not just my own well-being, which, as a dude, I've lived in some really slummy places, and I've ate foods that I should not have eaten, and I lived on very little. But now having to work to sustain a family and wanting to offer them the best, it adds a dimension of pressure that I didn't expect. So there's there, and wanting to do well and be successful for them, while also giving them the ultimate luxury. And I'm sorry if it sounds not modest, but outside of the material things, there's what I lacked is the availability of my parents. Right? We never lacked anything, even though we grew up pretty poor, but we lacked them in a way because they were busy providing and sustaining. So if I can get the balance right between doing what I need for the material aspect, but also having enough of me to give, I think I would have done well. I'll say this to finish that part, which is when we grew up, money was always an issue. We grew up poor. My parents are first generation Israelis. My father grew up in a refugee camp for Middle Eastern Jews. He contracted polio when he was there. My sister grew up with 5 brothers and sisters in the same room. So they came from practically nothing. And so we grew up with, I never felt shortage, but I also knew we're not rich. I learned English because when they wanted to talk about money, and there was nowhere to hide in the small apartment we were living in, they spoke in English. So when they started speaking English, I'm like, oh, they're talking about money. I better learn English if I want to know what's really going on.
Wow.
So yeah, hopefully my kid won't make fun of my accent, and
I'm sure.
and I'll be around to speak about things that are not money.
Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. And how can people reach out to you and see all the different things that, like, go plug yourself? Where can people see you?
LinkedIn is the worst place to get in touch. So I would say there. I'm not on social media. I'm also not selling anything in particular. So that's a nice feeling to have. If you are building in defense tech, then by all means reach out. And even if we can't invest, we'll be helpful. If you're interested in promoting Texas-Israel trade, you can go to texasisrael.org and see everything that we're up to. We host quarterly events and we bring business luminaries to speak and meet the community. There's investments opportunity, there's employment opportunity, there's a whole bunch going on. And if you don't want to do any of that, just keep doing your Texas thing and keeping Texas such a wonderful place to be in and work in. And if that alone happens, we're grateful and happy. I'm
sure a lot of people here are fans of the chili parlor, so I'm sure they'll see you there. So thank you again for your time and for telling us what you're doing. It's awesome.
I appreciate it. You're a gracious interviewer. Thank you.